Yeah. So, chapter 2. I didn't show you the slide yesterday, but this is the summary slide. The acronym for chapter 2 was Gita, G standing for Guru. We talked about how, without this concept of surrender, it is difficult to accept and acknowledge a Guru. So, humility means, first of all, acknowledging that you have a weakness and that you need help and you need intervention. So the precondition to surrender is actually courage and humility. So in one of the shlokas in chapter 2, Arjuna actually says, Shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapannam. He is saying, I am now your disciple. I accept you as my teacher. I'm a fully surrendered soul unto you. Now, although Arjuna is saying, verbalizing that he is surrendering, there is a difference between expressing a mental thought of surrender versus the real surrender that has to happen from the heart. There is this intellectual surrender, which in reality is not surrender. And then there is surrender that actually happens from the heart. Atmanivedanam, they call it. So although Arjuna speaks about surrender in chapter 2, do you know when he really surrenders? He surrenders in chapter 11. When does he surrender? When he realizes who Krishna is. When Krishna shows him the universal form, his cosmic form, the Virat Rupa form. So although he has expressed his surrender, he actually surrenders sometime much later. Until then, he's still got so many doubts that's floating in his mind that he's trying to get clarity to. So I just, happened to be studying for an exam that I have coming up next week. And there is this book written by Srila Prabhupada, based on a book written by Rupa Goswami, who is the preeminent disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu around 500 years ago. And Srila Rupa Goswami writes a book called the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the ocean of the nectar of devotion. Why is devotion considered topmost in the Shastra? And Prabhupada essentially takes Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and concisely summarizes it in a book that Srila Prabhupada writes called the Nectar of Devotion. So in this nectar of devotion, there are multiple examples of how one must accept a spiritual master and serve him submissively, accept his instructions, listen to him, learn from him, and apply the instructions. So this is specifically, this particular paragraph I'll just quickly read is coming from Srimad Bhagavatam itself. Sage Prabuddha continued to speak to the king, King Nini, as follows. My dear king, a disciple has to accept the spiritual master, not only as spiritual master, but also as the representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the Super Soul. In other words, the disciple should accept the spiritual master as God, because he is the external manifestation of Krishna. As we discussed, Guru is always accepted as an external representative of Krishna, and therefore worship of Guru is higher than worship of Krishna. There is a Purana called the Adi Purana, in which there is a conversation between Lord Krishna and Arjuna. And in that Adi Purana, Lord Krishna says, my dear Arjuna, those who say they are my devotees, they're actually not my devotees. But those who become devotees of my devotees, they are really my devotees. What is Krishna prioritizing there? He is saying, nobody should approach me directly. If anybody claims that Krishna is my supreme Lord and I don't need any intermediary to access him, I don't consider him a devotee. But any soul that has surrendered to a pure devotee of mine, oh, that soul is actually my devotee. So Krishna is also prioritizing, which we will discuss in the chapter tomorrow, chapter 4, the importance of Guru, living Guru in one's life. This is confirmed in every scripture, and a disciple should accept the spiritual master as such. One should learn Srimad Bhagavatam seriously and with all respect and veneration for the spiritual master. That's why we also do Guru Puja every day. Because the Shastras say, for us, the living God is Guru. Therefore, Guru Puja is important. Every day we offer Guru Puja to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada is accepted as the preeminent Acharya. The word Acharya means one who leads by example. Another meaning of the word Acharya is that pure devotee who is able to explain complex philosophies using analogies, which is exactly what Srila Prabhupada does throughout his books. Prabhupada has written more than 80 books. Between the age of 68 to 82, Prabhupada wrote 80 plus books. So he's left behind for us a wealth of instructions for us to follow. So here, Srimad Bhagavatam itself is saying, one should learn Srimad Bhagavatam seriously and with all respect and veneration for the spiritual master. Hearing and speaking Srimad Bhagavatam is the religious process that elevates one to the platform of serving and loving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So spirituality has the highest status in the yoga ladder, and we will talk about the yoga ladder today. So coming back to this summary slide, we then talked about identity, the fact that Krishna establishes identity at two levels. One is that Arjuna is not just this body, he's the spirit soul. Two is his identity is that he's a Kshatriya. He's prematurely trying to be a Brahmana or a sannyasi. And Krishna chastises him again and emphasizes that point here when we talk about chapter 3. So the idea of self is that we have a physical body, we have a subtle body, and we have the soul in its original condition of Sachit Ananda, Vigraha. So the gross body is composed of the 5 elements. The subtle body comprises of the mind, intelligence, and ego. Then we talked about the 2 dharmas. We all have a dharma towards our body, and we also have a dharma towards our soul. So swadharma and nitya dharma. But in this context, because swadharma means varnashrama essentially. What are our duties and responsibilities in relation to varnashrama? And I was speaking about how when you have decided to become a devotee of the Lord, then varnashrama does not apply to you. Varnashrama applies to those who are not devotees of Lord Krishna. And again, coming back to the nectar of devotion, there is a chapter where Lord Krishna himself tells this to Uddhava. Again, this is from Srimad Bhagavatam. So the Uddhava Gita is there in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So here, Lord Krishna is telling Uddhava. In the 11th canto, 20th chapter, verse 9 of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Lord himself says, one should execute the prescribed duties of Varna and Ashrama as long as he has not developed spontaneous attachment for hearing about my pastimes and activities. So Krishna is saying, those who are not attracted to me, they should follow the Varnashrama system. One should execute the prescribed duties of Varna and Ashrama as long as he has not developed spontaneous attachment for hearing about my pastimes and activities. In other words, Prabhupada is writing, in other words, the prescribed forms of Varna and Ashrama are ritualistic ceremonies of religion intended for economic development, sense gratification, or salvation. Salvation meaning liberation. All of these things are recommended for persons who have not developed Krishna consciousness. In fact, all such activities are recommended in the revealed scriptures only to bring one to the point of Krishna consciousness. So we talked about dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So for those who are interested in materialistic desires, we talked about where Krishna criticizes the flowery words of the Vedas, and those who are attracted to it are actually not intelligent at all. Because he's saying they are so caught up in materialism. They have forgotten me. So if they have forgotten me and they are not attracted to me, then they should follow the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas. So all of these things are recommended for persons who have not developed Krishna consciousness. In fact, all such activities are recommended in the revealed scriptures only to bring one to the point of Krishna consciousness, which means even if you follow the Karma Kanda portion of the Vedas, the assumption of the Vedas is that at some point you'll realize the futility of following materialism and you'll begin to ask questions such as, why am I suffering? My existential crisis is that I am in this cycle of birth, death, and old age and disease. But one who has already developed spontaneous attachment for Krishna does not require to execute the duties prescribed in the scriptures. It doesn't mean we don't have duties. It doesn't mean if you become a devotee or freelancing. No, not at all. We will still perform our duties, but we will do it to please Krishna. Hence I said, if we want to enjoy eating out, we will honor Krishna Prasadam. If we want to sing and dance and party, we will do it in such a way that pleases Krishna. If we want entertainment, we go and listen to Srimad Bhagavatam classes. That is our source of inspiration for us. That's our food for the soul. So the activities are the same, but the way we fulfill our desires is different. Desires are the same, but the difference between how devotees fulfill their desires versus how non-devotees fulfill their desires, there is a difference. But otherwise, we also believe in performing our duties. But today we will learn why Bhakti Yoga is topmost in the Lord, in the ladder, in the yoga ladder. Yeah? So coming back, so then we talked about how your lower desires must be replaced by higher desires. So instead of watching a movie, you should spend time attending a Bhagavatam class. Instead of going to Paris or somewhere else for your vacation, you should go to Vrindavan or Mayapur or Dwaraka and spend time there in Sadhu Sangha, because this is going to benefit you. And we said anything that you do on the bodily platform is temporary. Anything that you do on the Nitya Dharma platform is eternal. The counter doesn't go back to zero. So coming to chapter 3, how does chapter 3 begin? But before we do that, I had promised some pastimes. So let's do the pastimes and then we'll come to chapter 3. To exemplify how, when we have material problems, seeking a material solution is actually going to entangle you further. We're going to go back to our scriptures. There is a great rishi called Shaubhari Rishi. He was in the Yamuna river And he was practicing a great deal of austerity by being under the river, under the water, I mean, meditating under the water, not on land. He didn't want to be distracted in the land. So he decided, I'll go inside the water and meditate inside the water. So that was his desire. So he's meditating in the water like this. And this is in the Yamuna River. And one day, a couple of fishes come to him and tell him, you know, you are our protector. You are a great saint. We have a problem on our hands. You know this Garuda? This Garuda comes and eats our family members. And he seems to have an insatiable appetite. Our population is dwindling because Garuda comes here frequently to feed on our family members. So Shaubari Rishi, feeling very compassionate, decides that he needs to take action. Because after all, the fishes have told him, you are our protector. You are inside this river. You are a great Rishi. It's your duty to protect us. So what does Shaubari Rishi do? He curses Garuda. And he tells Garuda, if you ever come here, anywhere around the Yamuna River, you will lose your life. So this is a curse that Shaubari Rishi gives to Garuda. So of course, Garuda, honoring the words of a great Rishi, no longer visits the Yamuna. But in the meantime, there is another pastime that happens between Garuda and Kaliya. Kaliya is the snake that Lord Krishna subdues in the Yamuna River. So apparently there was an agreement, without me going into the details of that pastime. There was an agreement between Garuda and the family of snakes that each family would take turns to provide one of their offspring as food to Garuda. This was somewhere in the islands of Maldives, the place where these snakes used to live. So Garuda would go every day, and dutifully each of the Naga families used to offer one of their offspring to Garuda as food. Now it came the turn of Kaliya to do the same. So Kaliya decides, who the heck is Garuda? Why should I give him my offspring? So instead of offering as per the agreement, Kaliya eats that offspring himself without offering it to Garuda. This makes Garuda extremely upset, and a great fight ensues. And Garuda is chasing the snake, and the snake, Kaliya, ends up in front of Anantashesh and begs protection from Anantashesh. Anantashesh is Lord Balaram, who acts as the serpent bed for Lord Vishnu. So at that time, Anantashesh says, you know, you can take protection in the Yamuna River because Garuda has been banished from there. And Kaliya says, thank you very much. So Kaliya goes and takes refuge in the Yamuna River. But because now Kaliya did not have any natural enemy, his ego gets puffed up more and more and more and more, until his ego becomes so poisonous, he becomes so venomous that he kills all the living entities in the Yamuna River. So which means Shaubari Rishi's curse to protect the fish actually backfired, because while he thought he was protecting the fishes from Garuda, with Kalia coming and occupying that place because Garuda was no longer there, had been banished. Kalia's poison became so intense that there was no life in the Yamuna River where he was staying. And then, of course, there is another pastime of how Lord Krishna actually subdues Kalia. So never seek material solutions for material problems, because it will always complicate matters and entangle you further. Better to seek spiritual solutions and not become too tied up with curses and vengeance stemming from anger. So this is an important lesson for us. Krishna talks about the importance of devotees in chapter 2 when he talks about the Sthita Prajna. He says there is a class of personalities who are my devotees, they don't get perturbed at all. And we read those shlokas last night. The importance of a devotee and how devotees are viewed by the Lord himself. So there is a very devoted Brahmana who is a devotee of Lord Ram. One day he is visiting Lord Ram and he hears that Lord Ram is maintaining a book of all those who are always remembering Lord Ram. So he was anxious to know whether his name was in that book being maintained by Lord Ram. So he asks Lord Ram, I understand, my dear Lord, that you maintain a book. Can I see it? And Lord Ram allows him to see the book. And sure enough, his name is there. And as he's looking through the book, of course, he feels overjoyed that his name is there being maintained by Lord Ram as somebody who's always thinking of Lord Ram. Much to his consternation, he doesn't see one name in that book. Can you guess whose name that is? Whose name does he not see in that book?
Lord Hanuman, maybe.
So he doesn't see Hanumanji's name in that book. And he's shocked. He asked the Lord, my dear Lord, but Hanuman is your greatest devotee. How come his name is not there in this book? He's always meditating on you. He is your topmost devotee. There's nobody superior to him. And the Lord says, oh, I actually maintain another book. And the Brahmana asks the Lord, another book? And the Lord says, yes, there's another book that I maintain. Much smaller book, fewer pages. So the Brahmana says, can I look at that book? And Lord Ram says, yes. And when the Brahmana opens that book, every page, every line has the word, has whose name?
Hanuman.
Hanuman. And he was puzzled. So he asked the Lord, why are you maintaining a separate book? He says, oh, that other book is for my devotees who are always thinking of me. This book is for me to recognize that I am always thinking about Hanuman. So the importance here is not that whether you are always thinking about the Lord. Are you such a great devotee that the Lord is always thinking about you? The Lord is always wanting to be with you. That is the position of a pure devotee like Lord Hanuman, where the Lord is always meditating on Hanuman. What a great devotee he is. So this is what we also want to aspire for or desire. So talking about this 64 crore souls who lost their lives in this battle of Mahabharata. 640 million people died on this battlefield. So there was a great rishi by the name Uttanga Rishi. Now, this Uttanga Rishi, he was like a wandering rishi. He was traveling in remote places and doing his meditation, etc. So the Mahabharata war has ended. But he has no clue that the war has happened because he is not in touch with society. So after the war has ended, Lord Krishna leaves Hastinapur to go back to Dwaraka. And on the way, he stops in Rajasthan, where Uttanga Rishi meets him. And at that time, Uttanga Rishi asks Lord Krishna, "My dear Lord, how are your relatives? How are the Pandavas doing and how are the Kauravas doing? Is everything okay? Is everybody well?" And at that time, Krishna tells him, "We just fought this battle, and I'm sorry to tell you all the Kauravas have lost their lives." And the Rishi says, "What? You were present personally in this battle and you allowed this to happen? Why did you permit such a thing to happen?" And the Rishi got so angry. He tells the Lord, "I will curse you." And Lord Krishna, being Lord Krishna, just smiles. And he says, "What is the point of your curse? You are a Rishi, but you are bereft of intelligence." And the Lord shows Uttanga Rishi his cosmic form. Seeing this cosmic form, Uttanga Rishi bows down and surrenders to the Lord. Again, intellectual surrender, not real surrender. So he bows down, he understands that everything that happens is the Lord's Leela, even if it means there is so much death and strife. Sometimes there is a greater purpose behind what happens. So he apologized and surrenders, and the Lord, being very pleased with Uttanga Rishi's surrender, asks Uttanga Rishi, "Ask me for a boon." And Uttanga Rishi says, "I'm a traveling Rishi. I don't stay still in one place. But since I've spent quite a bit of time in Rajasthan, and this is a place, it's a desert, you don't get water easily. So if at all you have to give me a boon, whenever I want water, whenever I want to quench my thirst, I want you to provide me water." Let's not talk about the boon he asks for. We will not get into that topic because then I will digress. So Krishna says, "Tatastu, I will fulfill your desire. Anytime you're thirsty, I'll make sure you get some water to quench your thirst." So sure enough, Uttanga Rishi one day gets very thirsty. And he prays to the Lord, "I need some water." And out of nowhere, a bedraggled looking person, an unkempt person, a Chandala. So in our scriptures, the word Chandala means dog eater. There is a particular community that eats dog meat. I think we all know which community eats dog meat. There is a specific name assigned to them in the Srimad Bhagavatam. They are called Chandalas. They are considered to be lower than the Shudras. So this Chandala comes with 4 dogs. But he has a water bag. And he offers the water to Uttanga Rishi. But Uttanga Rishi, looking at him, he says, how can I accept water from a low caste? And he walks away. So he doesn't accept the water that has come through this Chandala. Chandala is lower than the Shudra, who's come there with 4 dogs and a water bag. So Uttanga Rishi prays and Lord Krishna appears. And Uttanga Rishi gets upset. He says, look, you promised me you will give me water, but you didn't come. Krishna says, as I recall, your boon was that if I'm thirsty, you need water. I didn't particularly hear that you wanted me to personally come and deliver that water to you. So Krishna said, that Chandala, I had actually assigned this job to Indradev. And Indradev thought he would test you. You are a great Rishi. Will you be really moved by externals? And therefore, Indradev came in the form of a Chandala to give you water. And you rejected it. I'm sorry to say, Uttanga Rishi, you still really have to work on yourself. Don't focus on the externals. The purpose of being a Rishi is to see everybody with equal eyes, to not to distinguish between Brahmana, Shudra, woman, man, high class, low class, wealthy, not wealthy. So the Lord truly values bhakti. The Lord does not value anybody's intellectualism, even if that intellectualism is in pursuit of the scriptures. Yeah. So with that, we'll do a quick run through of chapter 2. Although I covered the summary slide, we'll then come to chapter 3. So primarily, Krishna is expressed his criticism in chapter 2 of those who are not focused on the higher ideals, but are only interested in materialism. They are performing rituals for the purposes of getting some benefits without any love in their heart for the Supreme Lord. We read a particular shloka 66, where the Lord says, those who don't establish a connection with me, I consider them to be not very intelligent and very foolish. They are wasting their time. So Krishna is essentially telling Arjuna, those who use the Vedas or religion to enjoy pleasures in this life lack wisdom. So in that context, Krishna talks about Karma Kanda, then moving from Karma Kanda to Nishkama Karma Yoga, to Buddhi Yoga, to Sakama Karma Yoga, and then to Nishkama Karma Yoga, and then he talks about Bhakti Yoga in chapter 2. Based on that, Arjuna has a question. So that's how chapter 3 starts. In response to Krishna talking about the yoga ladder, Arjuna has some doubts. So chapter 3 begins with Arjuna asking a question. O Janardana, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than fruit work? Which means if Buddhi Yoga is better than Karma Yoga, why do you want me to act? So there are two ways in which we can understand this. In the next shloka, Arjuna says, my intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be most beneficial for me. So Krishna has talked about the yoga ladder. Karma kanda means you want to fulfill material desires and therefore you follow the Vedic scriptures and do what you need to do to get whatever outcome that you want. Whichever demigod you need to worship for whatever outcome, you are authorized to do that. Now, Arjuna has already said in chapter 1, I don't care for this kingdom. I'm not attached to the kingdom. I'm not attached to even the 3 planetary systems. I will go away to the forest. So Arjuna has already said, I'm not interested in the kingdom. So which means point 1 is gone. Karma kanda is gone. Arjuna is not interested in karma kanda. Then Krishna says, all of us have to act for particular outcomes. We don't have a choice. We are forced to act. Therefore, at least do sakama karma yoga. Whatever you want, do it, but be attached to your duty. Don't just reject your duty, because that is actually sinful. Krishna says you may think you're walking away from this battlefield. You're not going to incur sins. He says by not acting, you are going to incur more sins. And the worst thing is you walk away, people will not praise you for your compassion. People will defame you, saying that you walked away from this battle out of weakness, out of fear. So you have a duty to perform on this battlefield. So since you have to perform the duty, become attached to the duty, and whatever results you get, enjoy it. If you get it, enjoy it. If you don't get it, what's the worry? So that is Sakama Karma Yoga. And then Krishna talks about Nishkama Karma Yoga, which is be attached to the duty but become detached from the results. Don't worry about the results. There are a certain class of yogis who perform what is called Karma Yoga, which means you become attached to the duty and become detached from the results. You're not worried about the results. Your only interest is you want to avoid karmic accumulations. You're not worried about anything else. And then Krishna talks about the sthita prajna, or the devotees. So there are two ways you could look at this argument that, or the confusion that this has created for Arjuna in his mind. So one is, he's telling Krishna, you told me Nitya Dharma is more important than Swadharma. I understood that the soul is more important than the body, which is what you told me in chapter 2. Fighting is on the bodily platform. Fighting has nothing to do with the soul. So why are you asking me to fight? You just got done telling me that the soul is eternal, the body is temporary, and the body is not that important. And fighting, as far as I know, is on the bodily platform. So why are you asking me to fight? And then you told me you should use your intelligence and take the right action. So I am using my intelligence and I have decided it is not appropriate to fight my own family members. What's wrong with that? So the verse that actually confounds Arjuna is 2.49, where Krishna says, "O Dhananjaya, keep all abominable activities far distant by devotional service. And in that consciousness, surrender unto the Lord. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers." So Krishna is saying, those who want to do karma kanda or sagama karma yoga are fools. And he has told Arjuna, my devotees, because they are situated on the proper platform, they will not engage in this kind of fighting nonsense. What they will do instead, they will surrender to me. So this is how Arjuna has interpreted this particular shloka. But that is actually not what Krishna meant. So the choice is not between thinking and fighting. The choice is not between surrendering to Krishna or fighting. So two choices. Either I should use my intelligence and come to the conclusion that I should not fight, because fighting is abominable activity, right? Fighting has nothing to do with devotional service. The second thing is, Krishna has said, use your buddhi, and those who use their buddhi will understand that this karma kanda and all is all useless. So this particular shloka confuses Arjuna, which causes him to ask this question. Are you telling me to fight, or are you telling me to renounce? I'm not clear. To me, it appears that all through chapter 2, you are saying you've put renunciation at the topmost level. Now, when I'm telling you I want to renounce, you're telling me get up and fight. I'm thoroughly confused, Krishna. Should I do karma yoga? Or should I do jnana yoga? Or should I do bhakti yoga? I thought you are asking me to use my intelligence to make a decision among these three yogas, which is the best. So how come I don't have the choice to do that? In response to that, Krishna will talk about duty. So today's chapter is about, once your identity is established, you now need to know, based on your identity, what is the job description that you hold, that every one of us has to perform. That is the topic of chapter 3 today. So chapter 3, let's offer our humble obeisances to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So today, the question is, renounce or work? Renunciation, there is two types of renunciation that Krishna will talk about, false renunciation and real renunciation. So Krishna is going to distinguish between the two. What is actually work? Krishna is going to talk about. So Krishna will come back to the yoga ladder that he's discussed in chapter 2 and re-explain to Arjuna and clarify things for him. So we will also use this opportunity to understand the yoga ladder a little bit better. Then Krishna talks about people in leadership positions. What should be their conduct? Why they should mind how they conduct themselves in society. And then Arjuna asks one more question. After Krishna has explained the yoga ladder again, what is duty, what prescribed duty, why is it important, what is true renunciation, what is false renunciation, what is a leader's role and responsibility, how should he provide leadership, how he should make sure he's not misleading his citizens and his subjects. Arjuna then has a question where he asks Krishna, yes, even if we all understand what our prescribed duties are, sometimes a human being is not able to help themselves and we go down the wrong path where we do not perform our prescribed duty. And the question he asks Krishna is, why is it that sometimes, even though we know what's the right thing to do, we end up doing the wrong thing? Why does that happen? And in answer to that question, Krishna says that's because Nitya Vairi means your eternal enemy is lust. So as long as you're carrying this lust within you, you will continue to make the wrong decisions. So remember, in chapter 1, it has been agreed both by Krishna and Arjuna that the Kauravas are sinful and therefore death is the only punishment for them, which will stop that cycle of performing even more papa. But in this chapter, Krishna will explain what is the cause of us accumulating papa. So one needs to understand what is the root cause. Killing by itself is fine. That's one way of rectifying it. But one needs to understand the root cause of the problem. The root cause of the problem is not focusing on your true identity and not understanding what your prescribed duties are. In that context, Krishna will talk about lust as being the enemy. So today's acronym is TREE. Tyaga, which is renunciation. Regulated activities, meaning activities that are done within the boundaries of the scriptures or done to please Krishna. Whatever pleases Krishna, you could say that those are prescribed duties. Again, what is the position of leadership? How should they exemplify proper conduct? And then the enemy, the lust. So we'll quickly go through this. So Krishna essentially says there is a false renunciate and there is a real renunciate. When Arjuna tells Krishna in chapter 1, I would rather lay down my arms and go into the forest and live off of the forest. Krishna is essentially telling Arjuna in this chapter, such kind of renunciation is false renunciation, which is called Falgu Vairagya. Why is it Falgu Vairagya? Because externally you may think, the situation is difficult. I don't know how to handle it. I don't know how to address it. So let me just practice some escapism. So externally, I can pretend I am a Brahmana. I'm ready to become a sannyasi. I'll go off into the forest. But Krishna will explain to Arjuna in this chapter, to become a Brahmana or to take on a sannyasi, you have to qualify yourself. This is not a switch that you just turn on and off. You can't suddenly say, tomorrow I'll be sannyasi. So to become a Brahmana or to get to the platform of being a sannyasi, there is a process you have to follow. You have to purify your heart. You have to purify your intellect if you want to be a Brahmana. And Krishna very politely tells Arjuna in this chapter, you are not qualified to be either a Brahmana or a sannyasi. So don't talk like a Brahmana. That is the criticism that Krishna has for Arjuna. You are talking like a Brahmana, but you're not qualified. You have to qualify yourself. There is a process for everything in our Shastras. So real renunciation is following the process until you exhibit the qualities that says you are a Brahmana, that says you are a sannyasi. So this is the difference between Falgu Vairagya and real renunciation. So what is false renunciation? Please recite after me. Karmendriyani sanyamya.
Karmendriyani samyamya.
Ya aste manasa smaran.
Aste manasa smaran.
Indriyartan vimudhatma.
Indriyarthan vimudhatma.
Mityacharasa uchyate.
Mityacharasya uchyate.
Can someone read the translation?
He who restrains the senses of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender.
So essentially what Krishna is saying, let's say you think you're ready to go to the forest. You're actually a Kshatriya. You are supposed to enjoy the taxes and wealth that you collect and in turn provide service to the citizens. There's no point in you going to the forest if you still have material desires. You will go to the forest and do the same thing, but you will be in the garb pretending that you're a Brahmana. So externally you may wear a kavi vastra, but internally if your mind has not been purified, your intelligence has not been purified, yes, externally you can wear whatever garb that you want, but if you've not qualified yourself by controlling your mind, by controlling your senses, by purifying your intelligence, then Krishna says you are just pretending. You are fooling yourself thinking that you've become Brahmana. This kind of escapism and premature giving up of responsibilities, Krishna says, is not acceptable in the Shastra. So this is false renunciation. So what is real renunciation? Couple of shlokas later. Let's recite the shloka. Yajñartart karmanonyatra.
यज्ञार्थात् कर्मणोऽन्यत्र
लोकोऽयं कर्म बन्धनः
लोकोऽयं कर्मबन्धनः
तदर्थं कर्म कौन्तेय
तदर्थं कर्म
कौन्तेय
मुक्तसङ्गः समाचर
मुक्तसङ्गः समाचर.
Somebody read the translation, please.
Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in the material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain free from bondage.
So Krishna has established Arjuna's identity in chapter 2. This is an important instruction for you and me. This is not just for Arjuna. What is our first duty? Our prescribed duty is we must work and offer it as a sacrifice to Vishnu. Otherwise, if we don't do our duties and responsibilities to please Lord Vishnu, Krishna is saying it causes entanglements for us. It will cause a lot of karmic reactions, which means those who are performing work under the Karma Kanda portion of the Vedas are not performing work as a sacrifice for Vishnu. What are they doing? They are performing their work to satisfy themselves. And Krishna is essentially saying, if you work to satisfy yourself, I'm sorry to say this, but you're going to accumulate a lot of karma. Therefore, the first important instruction is that whatever work we do, we have to offer it as a service to Lord Vishnu. Krishna says, this is a sacrifice you must perform. Now, Krishna has said in chapter 3 itself that everybody has to work. Even in chapter 2, he has said, everybody has to work. We are forced to work. None of us can afford to sit idly thinking the food will come by itself, the shelter will come by itself, whatever is written in destiny, it will anyway happen, so why should I act? Krishna says, no, you will be forced to act, to take care of your body, to take care of other things. Every one of us is forced to act. But we have a choice. We can work for ourselves or we can work for Krishna. So Krishna is telling you, he's offering you a job here. He's saying work for me instead. Because if you work for yourself, you're going to entangle yourself. If you work for me, there is no entanglement. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction. And in that way, you will always remain free from bondage. So this is the first job description. Whatever work that we do, doesn't matter what work it is. It doesn't matter what work it is. You could be a menial laborer, you could be a doctor, you could be a teacher, you could be a politician, you could be a renunciate. Krishna is saying, whatever you get up and do every day, think of me, offer the work to me, offer the results to me. Then there is no karma. So essentially, Arjuna thought of leaving and going off into the forest. But Bhagavad Gita throughout teaches you, this is not about escapism. It is about actually living a fulfilling, exuberant life by dedicating yourself to please who? Lord Vishnu. So that's the first job description. Yajna. 1 second. Let me move something out of the way. Yeah. Yajna Shishtashina Santo.
यज्ञशिष्टशिनः सन्तो
Chante Sarvakilbishaihi.
मुच्यन्ते सर्वकिल्बिषैः
Punjate Te Tvagam Papa.
Bhunjate te tvagam papa.
Ye pachantyatma karanat.
Epachantyatma karanat.
Somebody read the translation.
The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment rarely eat only sin.
The first instruction was work for me. Second instruction is whatever you eat, offer it to Lord Vishnu first. If you don't offer to Vishnu, what is Krishna saying?
You are only eating sin.
You are only eating.
Eating sin.
Which means Krishna is saying you should be only taking prasadam every day. So which means we have to change our diet. Our diet should be prasadam. Second instruction for us. This is second duty for us. Why? Because even the process of, even if you're a vegetarian, it's not a great thing, nothing to be proud about. Even being a vegetarian, you're causing harm to so many insects, to so many jivatmas. We are killing so many jivatmas just to stay alive. To remove the sins of killing those jivatmas, Krishna is giving you a simple solution. Whatever you prepare at home, offer it to me. If you don't offer it to me, you have to accept the sins of, even though you may not have physically planted that plant and uprooted that plant and transported it over planes, trains, trucks that killed so many insects along the way, so many unethical practices, black market, all of those sins you have to accept. If you're smart and if you're intelligent, you will avoid this trap. Very simply, whatever you prepare, with love you offer it to me, and then if you have sanctified food, that is also considered a yajna. So honoring prasadam every day is considered an austerity. So this is another instruction that falls under the umbrella. What is my job, duty, and responsibility? So we said Arjuna got confused about this yoga ladder. So this yoga ladder, see, Arjuna thinks this karma yoga, jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, bhakti yoga is like a four-way intersection. And each goes in a different direction. That's what he's thinking. So he can pick and choose where he wants to go. But Krishna will explain the same thing again here in chapter 3 and essentially tell Arjuna, actually it's not a four-way intersection, it's a ladder. You have to start from the bottom and go your way up. So the bottom of the ladder starts with karma kanda. Now, of course, outside the ladder is those who don't follow the Vedic scriptures at all. So they are not interested in yoga, therefore the yoga ladder does not apply to them. For them, only papa they are incurring because they're not even following the scriptures. At a minimum, Krishna expects you to follow the scriptures. Even if you can't become his devotee, he says, at least Baba, you start with karma kanda. I'm okay with that. You start your journey on the bottom of the yoga ladder called the karma kanda, which means you have a lot of material desires, but you fulfill it in accordance with the scriptures. One rung above that is that you have material desires, but you always get attached to your duty and the work itself, and then you enjoy the results. In karma kanda, it is just sense gratification. However I can get it, I will get it. As long as the Vedas allow me to do it, I will do that. So sakama karma yoga means you are attached to the results. You're doing it with a particular intent, but you are strictly following the process. So Krishna has given Arjuna options, you know. If you want to enjoy yourself, you do karma kanda. If you don't want to enjoy yourself, then at least you should become attached to the duty. So within being attached to the duty, there are two levels, sakama and nishkama. Sakama means you're attached to the results. You are heavily invested in the results. And because you're so keen on the results, you become very attached to the duty. With Nishkama Karma Yoga, the only thing is that you are attached to the duty, you're detached from the results. All you're trying to do is you are avoiding karmic outcomes, which means you are actually karma conscious and not Krishna conscious. You're so worried about accumulating karma that you go out of your way to reject everything. You're attached to duty, but you don't want the results. You say, no, it's not mine, because if I get attached to the results, I'll get entangled. So you are practicing karma consciousness and not Krishna consciousness. So in Nishkama Karma Yoga, Krishna is not in the picture. You're not a devotee. You may be a great personality because you're offering everything in the service of society, like philanthropists and all. But that doesn't mean philanthropists are devotees of Krishna. There's a big difference. So Krishna then tells Arjuna, well, if you're not interested in the kingdom, then at a minimum you should fight, because that's your duty. Don't worry about the outcome. If you're not interested in the outcome, at least you need to follow your duty, because not doing your duty, you're going to incur sins. Above this Nishkama Karma Yoga is Jnana Yoga, above that is Dhyana Yoga, and above that is Bhakti Yoga, which means essentially if you start in Karma Kanda, it should culminate in Bhakti Yoga. So this is what Krishna is explaining to Arjuna. Then Krishna talks about, as leaders, how should we actually conduct ourselves. Yad yad acharati shreshtaha
Yad yad acharate
Acharati
shrestha,
Shreshtha
tad tad evetaro janaha
tat
Tad Evetaro Janaha
sayat pramanam kurute
Sayat Pramanam Kurute
lokastad anuvartate.
Lokastad Anuvartate.
Translation, somebody read the translation.
Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow, and whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues.
Another instruction for us as part of prescribed duties. Arjuna said, put down my arms, I'll go to the forest here. Why all this janjat? Krishna is saying, are you crazy? You're in a leadership position. If you give up so easily, then tomorrow your praja will do the same thing. If you give up your duties and responsibilities just because you're confused and just because you're compassionate, if you don't perform your duty, tomorrow your citizens will not perform their duty. And we talked about this during the Secrets of the Gita revealed, that each one of us has to perform our prescribed duties in order for entire society to function smoothly. Even if one person violates their duties and responsibilities, it creates so much chaos in society. It has a ripple effect in society. So Krishna is saying, you are in a leadership position, but even you and I are in leadership positions. If I'm a mother, I have a duty and responsibility. I have a particular duty and responsibility to perform. If you're a father, if you're a doctor, if you're a teacher, if you're a researcher, it doesn't matter. You have certain duties and responsibilities you have to perform. Because if you don't do it, your family members will see it and say, you are not doing it, why I should do it? So like this, it's a ripple effect in entire society. So even if one man abdicates his duties and responsibilities, it creates such chaos in society. Hence Krishna is saying, each one of us needs to understand what our roles and responsibilities are, and we need to perform it really well. It may not be perfect, but we need to do our best. Here Krishna will say in this chapter, it's okay if you don't perform your responsibilities perfectly. It is okay. but at least make an effort and do it. That is Lord Krishna's expectation. Leaders are exemplary. So if we don't lead, who's there to follow? People only question and criticize. So ethics and morality matters even in the smallest of things. Choose your leader carefully, which means since Krishna has talked about, taking instructions from a guru. So that means choosing a guru also is an important aspect of our life. So it's such an important decision in our life when we choose to accept a guru. Guru means he's always a student. He never gives up the Shastras. He's always learning. Preaching means you're always studying. A preacher can't just come and wing it. Again and again, the preacher has to go back to the Shastras. If the preacher does not have strong realizations, he'll become a very ineffective preacher. So even the process of choosing a guru, there has to be care in how you go about doing it. How do you select a guru? So, so yes, we talked about the social fabric will get frayed if we don't adhere to our respective duties and responsibilities. So then Arjuna asks this question, even though I know the best course of action, but what is it that impels me to act improperly and against my good intelligence? So this is the question that Arjuna asks. I know what you're saying. You've discussed in detail about why duties and responsibilities are so important. But I know for a fact that sometimes I don't feel like performing my duties and responsibilities. I am tempted to do the opposite. And his question to Krishna is, why? And Krishna's answer is, your enemy is lust. So we'll see how to connect the dots here. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagavan
Bhagavan
Kama Esha Krodha Esha
Kama Esha Krodha Esha
Rajo Gunasamudbhavaha
Rajo Guna Samudbhava
Mahashano Mahapapma
Mahashano Mahapapma
Vidyenam Miha Vairinam.
Vidyenam Iyavairinam.
Somebody read the translation.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "It is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world."
Krishna has already talked about this in chapter 2. How when you see something, you contemplate it, you get attached to it. And the more you get attached to it, your lust increases. Here, lust doesn't mean just sexual desires. Lust means all desires, irrespective of what you're chasing. And if the lust is unfulfilled, Krishna has said it leads to anger. And when anger increases, it leads to bewilderment and confusion. And that bewilderment leads to loss of intelligence. And loss of intelligence means you end up making the wrong decisions. And when you make the wrong decisions, how does society experience these wrong decisions? Of course, these are the extreme end of wrong decisions, right? Crimes, suicide, rapes. But in our own little worlds, we are making wrong decisions and experiencing the outcomes of that. So Krishna is coming back to that point now. And he's saying the source of all of this is lust. Lust is what causes you not to take the right decision. So Krishna uses analogies again. He says, like the mirror covered by dust, like the fire covered by smoke, like the embryo packed up in the womb, These are the gradations of lust. Some lust is very easy for us to overcome. Some lust is like being tightly packed up in the womb. It's like it constrains you so much. You're not able to overcome this kind of lust. So he's talking about the different degrees of lust that we have to deal with. And in that sense, Krishna is using the analogy of mirror covered by dust. You just have to wipe the dust and you can see yourself. When the smoke covers the fire, it obstructs the fire sometimes. So it takes some time before you can actually see the fire. And then, of course, if you're packed up in the womb, there's hardly any room for you to maneuver. So Krishna says lust is like this itch. The more you satisfy it, the stronger it grows. Avrittam jnanametena.
Avrittam jnanam etena
Jnanino nityavairina.
jnanino nityavairina
Kamarupena kaunteya.
Kamarupena kaunteya
Dushpurena cha.
dushpurena cha.
Can someone read the translation?
Thus, the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by its eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire.
So lust is like constantly pouring ghee on the fire and expecting the fire to be put out. So Krishna says, if you keep feeding the lust, it becomes an uncontrollable enemy for you. So if you think you can satisfy your lust even once, it spurs you to do it again and again. So hence Krishna calls lust the Nityavairinam, meaning Nityavairi, meaning eternal enemy. So then Krishna will give the solution. First, he will tell you, where is this lust hiding? The lust is hiding in our senses, mind, and intelligence. So Krishna says the senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. So now Krishna has told you where this lust is residing. So that's battle plan number one. First of all, you need to know where is the enemy. Krishna is telling you where the enemy is. It's in our senses, it's in our mind, it's in our intelligence. That's where it's hiding. The three hideouts. Battle plan number two. Now that you know where the enemy is, how are you going to tackle the enemy? So battle plan number two. This again, Krishna talked about higher taste in chapter 2, lower taste, higher taste. So he'll reiterate that here. He says the senses should be regulated, which means one example he gave is eating food without offering to him is like eating sin. Preparing and offering it as bhoga to him is sanctified food. You don't experience karma. That way you control your lust. Again, when you do everything to please Krishna, you can control your lust. So Krishna is saying, whatever you do with the senses, regulate them. When you regulate the senses, your attachment to sense objects will reduce. Then, another option Krishna is giving is, you need to strengthen your mind and intelligence. How can you strengthen your mind and intelligence? Simple formula we talked about, ABCD. Association of other devotees, book reading, not any book reading, Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita, chanting every day, spending some amount of time meditating on Krishna by chanting his holy names, and changing your diet by accepting only Krishna Prasadam every day and doing some amount of deity worship every day. So Krishna is giving again a solution. Again, this is part of your prescribed duty, right? Another prescribed duty is he's saying you need to regulate your senses. Another prescribed duty is you need to cleanse your knowledge, just like Adi Shankaracharya said. The way to cleanse your mind and knowledge and the filth that is there is to read the Shastra every day, even if it's for 10-15 minutes. Strengthen the intelligence by chanting, hearing, reading, discussing, and applying Shastra. We call it ABCD. A stands for, I think Dhruva is here. Do you want to read this? Can you read it? Or Yuva is here, sorry. Hema Mataji, your daughter is here with you? Hare Krishna.
Yes, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Yes, so Yuva, can you read this ABCD?
Yes. Yes.
Please read it.
A. Associate with
Right.
right
Sattvic people. Associate with the right people. Okay. B for
book.
what
Read
books?
Bhagavad Gita. Recite.
Regularly. C.
C. Chant the mantra names of the Lord
Lord.
Krishna.
Very nice. Just like you chant every one round every day, right? So Krishna is
Yes.
saying do that. D for
Diet
diet.
water.
Oh my. Watch what you eat. Which means you should honor only Krishna Prasadam every day. So we need to follow this simple ABCD formula to regulate our senses, mind, and intelligence. So with that, we come to a summary of chapter 3. Chapter 3 is all about Karma Yoga. We said the acronym for today is TREE, beginning with Tyaga. What is true renunciation? What is Falgu Vairagya or false renunciation? Which means we should understand who everything belongs to. Everything belongs to Krishna. The only thing we can offer Krishna that doesn't belong to him is what? What is it that we possess that we can offer Krishna? Because it is something that belongs to us. Because everything else belongs to Krishna.
Love.
Love. The only thing we can offer to Krishna is our love, because everything else he has supplied you. He is the owner of everything. So all Krishna is looking for is love. So with that, I will recite a small pastime. There is a great devotee by the name Chokamela in Pandharpur. He loved Lord Vithala so much. He would sing and dance and chant every day in front of the temple. And everybody would glorify him, saying, "You're such a great devotee of the Lord. You sing so sweetly. We are so attracted by your love for us."
Hare Krishna Mataji, we lost a connection. Sorry.
That's okay. So this Chokamela would stand outside the temple doing kirtan, dancing, chanting, glorifying the Lord every day. But because he belonged to a low caste, he was not allowed into the temple. And he would very gently argue with those who glorified him for his love for the Lord. And he would say, why won't you let me in to have darshan of the love of my life, Vittal? And he would tell them, does the sunlight discriminate? Does the sun only shower its heat and light on those who are good? Does the air allow only those who are good to breathe? Everything is supplied by the Lord. There is no discrimination in nature. Anybody can access nature. But why are you preventing me from taking darshan of my Lord Vittala? And at that time, they would tell him, it's your misfortune. You have not received the mercy of the Lord, because had you received the mercy of the Lord, you would have been born in a higher caste and you would have had no problem taking darshan of the Lord. You have not received the mercy of the Lord, and therefore you cannot enter the temple. And that night, Chokamela cried out to the Lord, saying, my dear Lord, I love you so much. Can I not get darshan of you even once? Why can't I see you once? Hearing this petition of Shokamela, Lord Vittala visits him that night. And Lord Vittala tells him, come with me. And he takes him to the temple. And Chokamela stops the Lord and he says, but my dear Lord, I'm not allowed to enter the temple. I'm of a low caste. And the Lord says, but who said you cannot enter the temple? I am here. I'm asking you to come inside with me. So he didn't need another invitation. So Chokamela steps into the temple. And the Lord and his devotee have a wonderful conversation late into the night. And the Lord tells him and instructs him what is important. You should always do Namashravan. You should always hear about my pastimes. You should always glorify me. So like this, the Lord was instructing him on what is important, which of course Chokamela was doing anyway. So 3:30 a.m., the main priest enters the temple, because if you've ever, which I watch every day on TV, 3:30 they come into the temple and they get ready for Mangalarti in the morning. The deities are woken up at 3:30 in Pandharpur. So the priest is overhearing this conversation happening in the sanctum sanctorum and he's wondering what the heck is going on. So he enters and who does he see? Chokamela. And the Lord, of course, has gone back to being both his hands on his hips and standing still. So the priest chastises Chokamela and says, how dare you enter this temple? This entire temple has been defamed. Everything has become unclean. So the society banishes Chokamela to a place where he has to live outside the city on the other side of the wall. He can't even come outside the temple anymore and do his bhajans. He's banished to the outskirts of the city. But his love for the Lord does not reduce. His affection and desire to see the Lord does not reduce. So he continues to do his bhajan. And Lord Vitala visits him every night. So one night, Lord Vitala is there, and Chokamela's wife, whose name is Saira, is serving the Lord Bhoga. And she accidentally spills yogurt on the Lord's vastra. And it just so happens the main priest happened to be passing by the house where Chokamela was banished to, outside the city premises. And he hears Chokamela chastising his wife for spilling yogurt on Vithala. And he thinks Chokamela is criticizing him. And he enters the house and slaps Chokamela, thinking, how dare you critique me that I have accidentally spilled yogurt on the Lord. So next day morning, when the priest goes to the temple, he sees that Vittala's cheeks are swollen and there are tears streaming down the eyes of Lord Vittala. And when the priest sees this, he realizes that this Chokamela is indeed a pure devotee of the Lord, that even though he had slapped Chokamela, the slap was actually accepted by Lord Vittala himself on behalf of his devotee. So then the main priest, along with the other priests and leaders in society, discuss this particular episode. They decide that because Chokamela is such a great devotee, that they would honor him and allow him to come inside the temple to take darshan of the Lord every day. So today, if you go to Pandharpur, outside the temple, you will see the place where Chokamela is buried. Such a great devotee of the Lord. So for the Lord, externals do not matter. You can be the simplest of person, but if you are sincerely practicing devotional service to the Lord, that is what attracts the Lord most. So the more you exhibit your love for the Lord, which is the only thing you can offer, which is the only thing you and I really own, because everything else is already supplied to you by the Lord himself. This is what the Lord desires most from us. So if we regulate our activities, initially it may not be possible for us to learn how to love the Lord because we've forgotten. We've been selfish for so many lifetimes, for so many births. Initially, it will not be easy for us to love the Lord unless you have a natural attraction already, as Krishna himself says here in this chapter. If you're not naturally attracted to me, he says, follow the Varnashrama system. So we say you follow the ABCD formula, you will develop deep attraction for Krishna. And that attraction begins with chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is the Yuga Dharma for us. This is one way for us to regulate our activities. And this is the only way we can conquer lust. So if we simply practice this ABCD formula, we are well on our way to begin this journey of falling in love with Krishna so that we can go back to him in this life itself. We don't have to wait to take another birth or another birth or another birth and risk going down the chain. So with that, we'll stop here. Mancha kalpatarupyascha kripa sindhu